I'm here today with Kyle Herring of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The interviewer is Adam Jones of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project, and today's date is March 17th, 2016. Now, Kyle, if you could begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Frederick, Maryland, in October 11th, 1987.
Okay, and did you grow up there?
No, I lived in Maryland for a year or so as a child. My parents moved back to Michigan, where they were from, back in the early 90s.
Okay. And where'd you guys move to in Michigan?
Grand Rapids, the southeast side, just off Kalamazoo.
Oh, okay. So you grew up in Grand Rapids, and where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school. Well, when I was in middle school, my parents moved to Kentwood, which is right next to Grand Rapids. And I went to East Kentwood High School. Was the last class to graduate early. Graduated in February of '06.
Really? Okay. And what'd your parents do for a living growing up?
My dad is an aerospace engineer for GE, and my mom works in healthcare for Spectrum Health here in Grand Rapids.
Fair enough. All right. So you're growing up, and you're much older than most people that are young now that would remember 9/11.
Right.
So what did you remember of 9/11?
I was in middle school. I was in 8th grade, and I remember the teachers went out in the hall throughout the day in the morning. They didn't tell us anything. We were just going through class. We didn't have TVs on or anything. We didn't have a lot of cell phones in class. So we're just sitting there. All of a sudden they come in like at 9 or 10 o'clock. I can't remember which. And they said, the U.S. has been attacked. They said, Twin Towers have been hit. We don't know a lot. You're going to go to your next classes. You may watch it on TV, but this is what's happening in the world today. And for the rest of the day, not much schoolwork got done. We went to, my next class was life skills, sewing and cooking and all that. And we, the teacher said, we're going to watch the news. We watched the news. We watched it over the whole hour. The next class, I went to it again, went to choir. He said, we're just going to watch the news. That's what we did. And for about the rest of the day, that's all we did was watch the towers get hit. I remember seeing it over and over again. So
Yeah. I mean, now because I was about like 7 when it happened, and it was one of those, I know this is bad, but 7-year-olds. I'm sure you guys knew at least a little more like, oh, this is
a little bit. I'm 6th or 7th generation Army, so I have a lot of tradition in my family, military. Dad was a Marine. My mom was an Army medic. So to me, it's more personal because I know, talking to my dad through the first Gulf War. I remember as a kid seeing the first Gulf War, the green night vision goggles on CNN and all that stuff. So I remember all that, and then coming to 9/11, you're like, well, this is like my dad talked about back in the day because he was in the Marines and all that.
right.
And so we knew that things were different. Even at that age, the kids aren't talking like, wow, this is like what we talk about in war. They attacked our Pentagon, our military, our financial center. This was all at war. We didn't know a lot. We just thought we were going to be invaded the next day.
Right.
At that time, we didn't know a lot. We just know we were under attack.
Okay.
So,
Do you feel like that contributed to your decision to enlist?
I think a little bit.
Yeah.
I've always had a sense of service. I've always wanted to be a soldier. This is all I've ever wanted to do since I was a kid. I remember as a kid wearing old camouflage uniforms, running in the backyard. This is what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be a Marine like my father.
Oh, okay.
I went and talked to the Marines. My dad was smart enough to tell me, get something useful out of the military. Don't just go, off an adventure. I mean, you'll have an adventure, but don't just go out there because.
Right.
So he said, don't join the Marines. So I went and talked to the Marine recruiters. And at that time, I wanted to do something with technology. My dad was an engineer. I want to do something with technology. That's got to be good, right?
Yeah.
So I did that. And I talked to the Marines. I spent about 6 months just hanging out with the recruiters. I was only 16 at the time, so I couldn't sign any paperwork.
Right.
I got close to my 17th birthday, and the Marines were like, all right, so I'm starting to think about paperwork. Let's get the ball rolling. And they're like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be an air traffic controller. Or, I want to be an air traffic controller. And they said, no, you can be an infantryman or a combat engineer. I said, screw you. And I left. And one of my friends at the time, who was in high school, just joined the National Guard.
Okay.
And I'm a junior in high school this time. He said, "Hey, I got on the guard. I got the job I wanted and a bonus. Marines don't have bonuses. If you ever talk to a Marine recruiter, the bonus is being in the Marines." So I went to talk to his recruiter, and I said, "I want to do some technology." And he's like, "Oh, well, here, watch some videos." I said, "I'll do that job." It was a 25 Quebec, which is a multi-channel transmission systems operator. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Got a $10,000 bonus, no, $6,000 bonus at the time. I was a junior high school, it was the spring, signed up, and with the National Guard at the time, it still is, at least today with the National Guard, is you can start drilling right away. You sign your contract, you're in the Guard, you can start drilling. Okay. You're not fully trained yet, you're not having any basic training or job training, but we can still give you some training, before you go off to your basic training.
Right.
On 1 week in a month. So I did that, and that summer, between my junior and senior year, I went to Europe for 2 weeks. Went to London, Paris, and Barcelona. Got to do all that cool stuff there. When I came back, it was time to do the 1 week, start my 1 week in a month and all that.
Okay.
And that's when I had to cut my hair. In high school, you wouldn't believe it, but I had hair down to my shoulders. I had
really?
Long red hair. Not many pictures exist of this, but it was there. Did my senior year, did my 1 week in a month, graduated early. So I left East Kentwood in January 2006. Ported to Port Benning 1 January.
Wow.
You leave in the morning from Lansing. They fly you down there. You land at Atlanta Airport. They tell you go to the clock tower in the middle of the airport. In the middle of the clock tower, a bus will pick you up eventually. Great instructions, by the way. You're 17 years old, 18 years old, you're going on to Atlanta, Georgia, big airport, and they say, go to this clock tower. You're like, all right, I guess I'll sit this clock tower. Well, about 9 o'clock, I'd say, this lady comes up, said, if you're going to Fort Benning, follow me. In no unofficial way. It was just somebody offhand and said, hey, if you're going to Benning, follow me.
Yeah.
Nothing, nobody in uniform, nothing at all saying, hey, this is what you need to do.
No one's yelling at you.
You're right. They could have been taking me to Mexico. I don't know. But I'm there with several, probably 100, 200 other guys. So we all follow. We're getting the bus.
Yeah.
We drive in the dark for what seemed like hours. It's like never-ending bus ride. We stop in the middle of the woods at this gate. This guy comes on. He looks up and down the aisleway of the bus and says, all right, see you guys in a few weeks, or a few months. And we drive. And they pull up to this building. And this drill sergeant comes on, says, you're not at basic training yet, this is your reception. You're going to do what I tell you, when I tell you, and you'll be just fine. He yells at us, I forget all the exact words, we go out, we step in the yellow footprints that are there, they give us a speech in the same footprints as soldiers before you. And then we stand there for a few minutes, and then we go inside start in processing. In processing was that first, this is at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, you haven't slept all day. You're in civilian clothes, you have your bag. You go in, they say go downstairs, we go downstairs. They put you in front of this little table, the little cube thing. They say, or they throw these sweatpants at you and sweatshirts. They say, get undressed right now. You're in this dark warehouse room with 100 other guys changing, get naked, they're going through your stuff, you're changing. Very surreal, it's the complete, you are no longer what you were. You're in our house now. So we did that, didn't sleep much. I started early the next day, went through reception. Reception was about a week. I was there over a Super Bowl weekend. One thing you should know about me is I don't like sports. I find them boring. I fall asleep during football games. And so I was there over the weekend. They don't do a lot of work on Sundays because people have the weekends off. I was forced to watch the Super Bowl, which I would rather go sleep, but I did the opposite. So we go to basic training. I was honestly disappointed with basic training. It wasn't that hard. I was expecting, from talking to my dad, to watching the movie Full Metal Jacket. If you've never seen that movie, the first half with the basic training, that's what you think it is. And there is some of that stuff to it, but I was just woefully disappointed with it. It wasn't that hard. Maybe I had high expectations from being, having a lot of military history and my parents talking about their experiences. Right. I probably knew more going in. Did the basic training, graduated, no issues. That was April-ish of 2006 I graduated.
Okay. And during basic training, you had no trouble with it because you kind of knew what to expect. And from the sounds of it, it's not these horror stories you hear about, the drill sergeant screaming at you and calling you those different names.
They yell at you quite a bit. It's more of an act for them.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember 2 distinct exercising routines. And you do a lot of work. You work out all the time. If you're not doing school or sleeping, you're working out.
Right.
One thing I remember is your ID card. You take your smoking use, what they call it. You do a lot of workouts, push-ups, sit-ups, all this stuff.
Yeah.
They tell you put your ID card on the tile floor. We're gonna work. And they say we're gonna work out till the ID card floats away, which means you sweated enough water for the ID card to get wet and it floats away. It didn't really ever happen, but it just meant it lasted a long time.
Yeah.
And then one of the exercises that stuck with me, and now a few other people I've encountered experienced it, was something called on your belly, on your back, and your feet. On your belly means you do push-ups, your back, flutter kicks, and on your feet means you jog in place. And the drill sergeants would do a tune to it, and they would just sing on your belly, on your back, and your feet like a song. And they would do it for a while, and they'd say it so fast. You're just twisting on the ground, trying to go up, down, up, down, up, down. You can't do anything except sit there and twitch and try to do anything. But those are the 2 exercises that stuck with me. Throughout the years.
Now, were there any guys that had trouble with basic training?
There were a few. I went through in kind of the winter, the end of the spring.
Yeah.
Basic training gets heavy with the high school kids starting in June, in the summer months. So I had a group that was on average a little bit older. I think my entire platoon passed. I think as a company, we had 4 platoons in a company. I think like 3 or 4 didn't pass.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, actually, no, one of my bunkmates, I take that back, one of my bunkmates that was like a bunk over, he didn't pass. Galusha. He was like halfway through when all of a sudden he started getting chest pain. And they said, all right, you're done. The medical out. He didn't stick around for very long after that.
Really?
So, yeah, one didn't make it.
Okay. And how did they deal with guys that would refuse to accept discipline? Were there any guys that would?
There were guys who really didn't like it. It's difficult. I had a group of guys from Ohio. They didn't like it very much. I don't know if that's just from that part of Ohio. They don't like discipline, or they're not used to other people telling them what to do. And they were from one of the inner cities of Ohio. And yeah, they didn't like it. But they all made it through. One guy didn't like cleaning on Sunday. Sunday was cleaning day, and we had these wall lockers that were double doored.
Okay.
Now to close it, you had to close it and then turn a handle to lock it. You can't close it from the inside. What he did is he sat in his wall locker with a bungee cord, because there's a little way you could hook on the bungee cord inside the door, and he pull it shut, so it looks like it's closed, and he can sleep all day on Sunday. Desperate people get very ingenuitive very quick.
Yeah, and besides working out, besides school, what else did basic training consist of?
A lot of weapons training,
Okay.
a lot of PT, ruck marches, standard infantry type training. Everybody there has not done their school yet, so they're all basic soldiers. So a basic soldier should know how to shoot a weapon, how to move, how to use a radio, basic first aid, how to dig a foxhole. Back when I went through, they still dug foxholes and fighting positions. I don't know if they do anymore, but
right.
we spent a lot of time digging holes in the woods, trying to avoid the spiders that are poisonous down there. So
right. All right. So you complete basic training in April of 06.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you go next?
Next, I went to Fort Gordon on the other side of Georgia.
Okay.
Fort Gordon is the home of Signal. I did 21-ish weeks at Fort Gordon and learning how to use radios. And it's kind of like the medium-sized radios. It's not like in the movies where you see the guy on the walkie-talkie in the backpack. It's more of a truck-mounted. You raise up antennas.
Okay.
You point antennas at each other. They can talk. Just trailer-mounted satellite systems.
Right.
Some of the higher-end stuff. What's interesting when I went through that course is a lot of the equipment is kind of broke up the course is in 2 phases: the old stuff and the new stuff. The old stuff was left over from the Cold War.
Okay.
It's called mobile subscriber equipment. The stuff at the schoolhouse was the equipment we trained on was stuff the French gave back to the U.S. Army when they were done using it back in the 90s. They said, thanks, we're good with it, they sent it back. But there's a problem with those. When you work on signal equipment, there's two modes, CONUS, which is stateside, and OCONUS, overseas modes. I don't remember the details of what they did with the circuitry. But once you flip that switch from US side or CONUS to OCONUS, you could never undo it. You could move the switch back, but the system was permanently now set to overseas use.
Oh.
And all the systems we had were for the equipment was overseas stuff. There's not a big difference, except you're trying to troubleshoot a problem. And you're like, it's not working. The instructors would flip the switch so it would trick you, because that's a very important thing to check, is making sure the switch is in the right spot. There's a couple times they'll trick you up, and you're like, yeah, it's not working. And then after 20 minutes, you're like, oh, that switch is flipped. This is an OCONUS machine. That's why it's not working. I got to do this to fix it.
Oh, okay.
And then the second last half was like satellites, kind of like more you see now, Jane M's and techno stuff.
Right. And you're getting into more, definitely by now, it's more sophisticated stuff that you're getting able to work with.
Yeah.
So you complete the time at Fort Gordon. And where do you go next?
Go home. Being
Okay.
the National Guard, that you go back to your home station, your home unit, which is my home unit was Charlie Sig, 156 Signal Battalion, out of Grand Valley Armory.
Okay.
That unit's been around for quite a while. So I come back, I report in, get my drill schedule 1 week in a month and the 2 weeks in the summer. The traditional guard, what you think.
Right.
I go to school. I go to Grand Valley Community College. Did okay. I wasn't very good at math. I think I failed a math class. I got to take another one. I did 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in summer for 2 years. And the Guard was really fun. Back then it was different. It was more the old school. You'll see a lot of Guard soldiers who are from, the early on to now. There was a big change. Back then, you got your training done, but you also had fun at drill. A lot of drill is camaraderie. That's one of the most important things you have in the Guard is you can teach anybody how to put a wire together or anything, but to build the teamwork, the Guard did very well at that.
Right.
A lot of it, consists of team building events at the NTO club, having beers.
Yeah.
But we worked all well. The Charlie Sig guys, they're not the best at taking mountains. They're not going to blow up a bridge. But if you want radios to work and work well, that's exactly what you want. They will keep the radios working nonstop. And it was around this time that I realized I didn't really like it. I was okay at it. I didn't really like radios and communications. Because I joined. I was like, hey, I'll do something like electronic with technology. Yeah, not so much. So I, about this time, 2 years into it, early on in 2008, we found out we were going to no longer be the 156 Signal Battalion. We were going to be a signal company for a Brigade Combat Team, which was new at the time. This new theory of Brigade Combat Teams gets into the organizational structure differences. But
Yeah.
and they said, we're going to get some extra, we're going to get a couple mechanics, a couple cooks, we're going to get a medic slot. Well, I told the readiness CEO, Sergeant Powerman, I said, I want to be the medic. He said, think about it, and then let me know later.
Okay.
The next day, at the Sunday of drill, I said, I want that job. He said, it's yours.
Okay.
And at that point, it was, hands-on. They sent me to school in that summer of 2008. They sent me to Camp Parks, California, which is right outside San Francisco.
Okay.
It's a weird base. The Dublin, California, where Camp Parks is, the median home income is like $80,000, $90,000. Very, very rich area.
Wow.
And there's a military base right in the middle of it.
Well, you got to protect the rich people.
Yeah, so they, but it was cool. It was right across the street from the BART station for the transit. We take the train into San Francisco and we had days off.
That's cool.
Medic school traditionally takes 6 months. We did it in like 3.
Oh, wow.
We worked 14-hour days for days on end. You would study a chapter or do a chapter in class. At night, you'd have to read ahead. The next day, you'll have a test on the stuff you learned in class the prior day. Then you got to read ahead. So you're juggling like 3 chapters of these books at once. We had half my class failed the National Registry exam for EMT Basic.
Oh, wow.
I think only 75% of the class eventually passed. Because they let you retake it a month later.
Oh, right.
But yeah, we had a high failure rate. But it's a fire hose. It's when you go to Fort Sam where the medics are traditionally trained, it's more relaxed. 8 hours of class a day, you get nights off to study the next day. But when you're in 14-hour days, it's a fire hose. You're cramming a lot of information very fast.
And you're probably also getting like hands-on training at this point.
Absolutely.
Too.
We had mannequins. We did IVs on each other. We poked and prodded on each other. We had to do ambulance runs. I got to work on an ambulance in San Francisco or what's that? Oakland.
Oh,
So
okay.
a very high activity area for medical or for ambulance calls. So I got to, and one day I treated an elderly lady, another elderly lady, a homeless person, an infant, car accident, all in an 8-hour period. I saw the whole spread from, I did CPR on a guy in the emergency room. When I left the emergency room, he was alive. I don't know if he lived, but when I left the emergency room, he was alive. And I was doing CPR on him in the ER, and they weren't getting pulses, they weren't getting anything. The only thing keeping him alive was me pumping on his chest. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then an hour later, we pronounced the infant dead. See, the infant had medical issues, but still, the gamut from, life and death in one day in medical, this was a lot. More than I got, I don't know if I want to call it fortunate, but none of the other students had those experiences. They got to touch and work with other patients, but not to the extreme that I had.
Not that real, like, this is real.
Yeah.
This is real life, this is happening.
Right.
Yeah, and do you think that kind of prepared you a little more for...
I think it gave me some confidence. I've not always been a confident individual. The Army has made me confident. I was kind of timid as a child, but now if I'm in a room, I'll take charge. The Army's taught me. They've ingrained leadership to the point now where when someone doesn't take charge, I'll take charge. Almost to a fault sometimes, because it drives me nuts. I get even at family events, I catch myself doing it. We're trying to do something as a family, and I go, just stop. We're gonna do it this way. We just do it. Quit whining. I can't stand indecisiveness. So it's made me more confident. And when you do CPR on somebody, I think that's a sticking point in my memory. That's something you've actually done. I mean, that's it's certainly very confidence boosting. So as a medic, I know I've done CPR before. I'm a real person. I've done the training, but I know how to do it successfully.
Right.
So that's definitely a confidence booster.
And did they give you other training too, like here's what to expect for combat-related injuries? And
they did.
Like
the first half of medic school was your EMT basic, like you see in an ambulance in the city, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The second half was a field craft, where it's down and dirty Army medicine. A lot of what civilians have done is taken the Army down and dirty stuff and applied civilian, like tourniquets. Years ago, tourniquets were the devil. You never use tourniquets. You put a tourniquet on, you're going to lose a limb or die. What we've known from Army experience, tourniquets are actually good. You get time. You'll see a lot more civilian EMS. Police and firefighters now carry tourniquets. There's a lot more civilian use of it just because the Army's shown these aren't torture devices from the Middle Ages. They actually are still useful and relevant tools. Yeah. So we did a lot of field craft out in the woods, moving litters, and it's now Camp Park's in the high desert. So it's, at least to me, I felt like it was hot. It was hot. It was dry. We were out in the field all day, and one day we were out in the field the whole day, and I didn't drink water until 5 o'clock at night. I didn't realize I forgot to drink water.
Oh, wow.
I didn't become a heat I didn't fall over, but I'm sitting there, we're just finishing up an exercise, and pick up my canteen and go, this is still full. I haven't drinking from this all day.
Uh-oh.
So that was a learning point to make sure I myself drink water, because I was a acting squad leader or a classroom squadron. I make sure all my guys drank, but I forgot to tell myself. So that's just common with leaders. We forgot to follow our own instructions.
All right, so you complete the training at Camp Parks, and where do you go next?
All right, I go back to Grand Valley Armory, go back to Charlie Sig, and we get alerted for mobilization. We know, hey, we're coming up on deployment. So early in 2009, we start getting the gears moving. We're getting equipment, we're getting training. We went to Vermont for 2 weeks to do some mountaineering training. Vermont is where the 86th Brigade headquarters is. It's the only mountain brigade in the Army by equipment structure and by training. So we went out there and learned how to do mountaineering stuff. We didn't do the actual mountain course, but we did a lot of the training, so we knew how to do it.
Oh, okay.
And that was fun.
What did that consist of?
Ropes courses, learning how to walk across a steep grade, horizontally across it. So putting up some ropes, putting carabiners on, making sure you're not falling down the side of a cliff and you're walking next to it. Rappelling, we did a 20-foot rappel, and then so we go to this rappel, and we were going through. I had my aid bag on. I had a big aid bag at that time. I'm still a new medic. I'm carrying this giant aid bag, probably weighs 50 pounds.
What would be in it?
Tourniquets, gauze, more gauze, bandages, IV fluids, needles, drugs, ACE wrap, anything you could think of. I didn't have an oxygen tank in there, but at that time, if I could have, I probably would have tried to fit it in there.
Right.
Because I was still new. I was still learning.
Yeah.
Well, we get to the end of the ropes course. We're just walking across the side of this, steep valley, and at the end, they're like, "All right, we're gonna rappel down this thing that they just put there." It's like, I got my stuff on. They're like, "That's nice. I've rappelled before, but I've never rappelled with 50 pounds of weight, a helmet, and everything else I have on." They're like, "Clip in." I was like, "Okay," and I went down, no problem. And the next day, we do 100, 150 foot off the cliff up in the mountains. That was really cool. We got some good pictures from that. But that was just off the face of a mountain. You're just kicking down, rocks are getting in the way. You got to kind of move around obstacles as you're rappelling down. That was really cool. So, yeah.
All right. So you're preparing for the mobilization.
Mm-hmm.
You wrap up your time in Vermont, and then you come back to Michigan?
I do come back to Michigan. Come back to Michigan. I start seeing a young lady who eventually becomes my wife, Regina, and around this time. And we start going out, and I'm like, all right. So we went out for a couple months. I said, I'm going to tell you what, I want to stay together, but keep in mind I'm going off for schools, I'm deploying soon, let's try it. If it doesn't work, but let's try it.
Yeah.
And we tried it. So we gear up for deployment in 2009, and we go down to Fort Polk. Going to Fort Polk Readiness Training Center.
Yep.
Spend two to 3 weeks in what's called the box. It's the immersion training where they finalize your training that you can deploy, that you're not going to get hurt 2 months.
Okay.
So we spent some time there, 3 weeks doing combat training, practicing convoys. I was a medic, so I worked in sick call, went in the aid station, worked with the doc, sharpened my skills. And that was November. We come back, December happens. We have our 2-day drill in December. We go, all right, we're going to be here January 3rd, show up, and we're going to be on federal orders. So we actually hit, the full-time side of it. So we come back, it's a snowstorm. January 3rd, Regina's dropping me off at the armory, and Regina's not the best driver in the world. I love her, but she's not a very good driver sometimes. And she's in her old car, which I never liked. And while I was deployed, I actually gave her my car to drive. I didn't like her car that much. So she's driving me in the army, drops me off. It's a complete snowstorm. It's nuts. We get there, dropped off, and we're sitting in the armory. Buses come. We get bussed down to Camp Atterbury. Go to Camp Atterbury to start the processing paperwork. Army loves its paperwork and it loves its medical paperwork too. And so we did 3 or 4 days of in processing, shots, physicals, hearing tests, all that. And then we start going on more deployment training. Like land navigation, briefings, don't touch the wildlife, don't kick things that you're not supposed to kick, that sort of thing.
Right.
We do that sort of training. All the medics are taken away. All the medics go to what's called Brigade Combat Tactical Training. They go in, it's a week-long training, and they just learn medical stuff from experts. SEER instructors, Green Beret medics, PJs, trauma surgeons. We did some high-end training. We learned a lot. A lot of stuff we already knew. We were really kind of a graduate level of knowing what you really need to know as a combat medic in the field. We did that for about a week, and that was some of the best training we've ever had.
Were they trying to introduce you to, okay, this is what an IED will do to a person?
Yeah, that's part of the whole line. IE training has was kind of in when I went to basic training. They said, "Hey, this is an IED. They're bad. Don't touch them." And throughout the years, they get more intense as we learn more. They send it back to the states, and we learn more from it. So IEDs, I've been in the picture since, at least for my military career, since 2006, but all the mobile trainings they go with more in depth. Every training we do is more in depth. We do the crawl, walk once. We go slow and get up to full speed in terms of how we do things. And then at the pre-mob training is where we're getting the full kick of this is how you handle situations.
Okay.
It's at Atterbury we learn that the first time we went to Fort Polk wasn't good enough. We missed a step. I don't know what the step was. Somebody messed up. We're going back to 3 weeks down in the swamps. And this time, I wouldn't be with Charlie Sig. As at Atterbury, they said a signal company doesn't need a combat medic. They said the MP platoon needs a combat medic, so I went to the MP platoon. Well, they decided the brigade headquarters didn't need the MP platoon hanging around, so they attached the MP platoon to the cavalry squadron. So that's how I wound up with the 172nd Cav.
Okay.
So I'd been attached a couple of different times, in a couple weeks to get the final spot. So when we hit Fort Polk again for the second time, I'm with the Cav unit, I'm with the MPs, and we go out in the woods. We shoot guns. We get dirty. We drive Humvees. We break Humvees. We did a lot of training. 3 weeks in the woods, just fighting a fake enemy.
Yeah.
So.
And that's another question I wanted to ask you when you're at Camp Polk, or Atterbury. Were they introducing you at all to okay, here's the enemy, and then here are civilians. Here's what you do. Here's what you don't do.
Yeah, the
don't
rules of land warfare. We get even now. We get every year on what the rules of land warfare are, and we're in deployment. It seemed like almost weekly, or at least monthly, or a lot. We were getting briefs. Hey, this is what you can do. This is what you can't do. And that's part of the training too at Fort Polk is they have role players who are the enemy, and the enemy. They have people dressed as enemy. They have people playing civilians, and you have to interact with them. They create a whole city where we stayed in for like a week of this fake training city that there's Afghan nationals who work there who are interpreters. We have, people playing the press. It's a whole scenario, everything you can think of. We had airplanes, helicopters playing. We had fake bombs, blank weapons. So we could shoot our weapons, they'd make a flash and a sound, but no bullet would come out.
Right.
They brought in a lot of people. And this is a whole brigade-wide exercise. And our little piece of it was just this one town for our company, or our troop. And they had all these resources. I just imagine the amount of resources they had brigade-wide.
Wow.
It's a very big undertaking. That's why I was surprised that we had to go back again. It was miserable. It was probably worse than almost worse than the deployment itself. The training they put, the pressure, and the towers, and the crap they threw at you.
Wow.
So, I was there from Fort Polk. Now, we're supposed to go back to Atterbury to fly out to Afghanistan. Everybody did, except for my troop. They said, you're going to fly right from here, from Polk, over to Afghanistan. So we got a 24-hour pass. Everybody else got to go to Atterbury, got to see their families, got like a week off. We got 24 hours to go, and we all went to Bourbon Street. That was a fun time. We drank a lot. That was the last time we could drink.
Right.
In Afghanistan, you can't drink at all. It's against the rules. But,
right.
So we all got plastered. And then we came back, slept in a weird tent thing for a couple days, and one night they said, pack all your stuff, we're leaving like at 3 a.m. And that's what we did. We packed up our stuff, got the airplane at Fort, I don't remember what airport, it was around Fort Polk, hopped on a civilian chartered flight, and we left. We flew from Louisiana to like Gooseneck, Canada, or something like that. Qarabagh, or Iceland. There's a place in Iceland where we refueled. Ireland we refueled. We couldn't get off the plane any of these times. We were just getting gas.
Yeah.
We get to Germany. They let us get off. It'd been like 8-10 hours on a plane. But we get off the plane. They have actually a special area to hold soldiers. it's a transit center there. The plane gets gas, they do maintenance on the plane real quick. All the guys can go grab a bite to eat, stretch their legs, go to the bathroom, buy a bunch of German stuff. They of course had a tourist trap there. You buy all the tchotchkes.
Well, yeah, of course.
Couldn't buy any of the alcohol that was there, but and then we get back to the plane. They're like, bad news. They're having an issue with Russia. We have to alter our flight path, which is longer, which means we need more fuel, which means we need to take off some bags. They're taking off thousands of pounds of bags, just sucking them on the runway. They said the next plane's going to pick it up. So luckily my bag didn't get tossed.
That's good.
But others did. And so we take off. We land in Kyrgyzstan.
Okay.
Manash Transit Center. They closed that a few years ago. Kyrgyzstan kicked us out, I guess. That was an interesting country. Cold, in the mountains, pleasant though. I mean, the airport we landed at was Soviet era. I mean, everything on it looks like we're in Soviet Russia. You know, everything. We hang out there for a few days. I buy a cell phone called a Roshan phone. I think it's Iranian or some local phone that works in Afghanistan. Hung out there for a few days. We got in a plane. We got a C-130 this time. Had a fun charter jet.
Right.
We got a military plane and we flew south to Bagram. Landed at Bagram. Got off. Spent 2 days doing some training there, getting our feet wet, and find out we're going down to Ghazni. We went down to. We got back out of C-130 at night. Flew out and flew in this place called Sharana. Sharana was always under attack, so we had to fly at night. We had to do a combat landing or like corkscrew. So you're doing these tight circles in a black plane. You can't see anything. All you know is you're turning, you're moving, and you're getting sick. Oh, I did not throw up. Other people got it. I think other people threw up, but you can't tell who's throwing up because you can't see anything.
Right.
Unless you get hit with it in the face, I guess. I don't know. I'd not get hit with a vomit, which is good.
That's always a plus.
So we land in Sarana. They drop the back gate, and they drop the gate or the ramp, and they say, "You see that white light over there? That's the transportation terminal. Go walk that way." And we're in Afghanistan. We don't see anything. We see a white light, nothing else. They just say, "Walk that way with all your crap." We don't even have ammo yet. We have no bullets. We have rifles. We got knives. We got our bags. We don't have bullets yet. We had one magazine. We had like 15 to 20 rounds each. So we had some ammo, but nothing to do anything except, take a stick at it, I guess.
Yeah.
So we walk over this light, and this takes forever. It's like they parked the plane at the far end of the runway, and we walk down the runway. We get there, they're like, all right, go to this tent. So we go to this nasty tent. One thing, the transient tents or housing is never really good. It's always the worst place to stay on base because you're only there for a day or two. We stay in this nasty tent. It was bad. Not the worst place I've seen, but it was one of the worst I've been. Had to sleep in. We stay there for a day or two. We call on the radio or the phone to the people we're replacing. We finally get contact with the people that we are going to replace. We said, we need ammo. They said, don't worry, we'll bring you ammo, plenty of it. We're going to pick you up tomorrow. They wanted to fly us by helicopter, but the unit wanted to leave. They couldn't leave till we got there. So they said, we'll drive our trucks out there and pick you up.
Oh.
So.
Now, and where in Afghanistan is this?
It's RT East is what NATO calls it. I forget the name of the province, but it's in the east side, east quarter of the country, kind of towards the south of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can't remember we didn't spend very much time in Sharana. I was only there like twice. But they come pick us up. And they're like, all right, we have to... They come in these MRAPs. First time we got to be in the MRAPs. These things are awesome. We had the Cougar MRAP, which is what we had. Well, they had a trailer. Like, what's in the trailer? That's your ammo. Just open this tarp. And this is just our platoon at this time of about 20, 25 of us. They're like, load up. We had more ammo than we could do with. So we get a full combat load, we get a spare combat load for our assault bags, and we get the trucks, we start driving on the road. And this is our first time on the road in Afghanistan. We'd done all the training. You mentioned IEDs. They said, yeah, watch out for IEDs. This is a hot area in Ghazni province. So we're driving on the road, and we're just going, and we come up to a place called Four Corners. I don't remember where it's on the map, but it's called Four Corners. and they were a group of Afghan police were taking fire, and it's a group that the people we were replacing worked with. And they're like, all right, we need to clear the sides of the road and go, try and help them as best we could.
Yeah.
And they said, all right, we're gonna go out, and we're all in our platoon. The couple guys with me, the driver from the back says, "Get out." We're like, "Us?" He's like, "Yeah, you guys." Like, we just got here like a day ago. We don't know which way's north yet, And we get kicked out. We get out. We go to the left side of the road. Get told to look for a guy in a red moped. There's red mopeds everywhere. It's like all they have is mopeds. So red, white, green. There's nothing, descriptive about any of these vehicles they drive.
Yeah.
So they kick us out, and we're all on edge. There was fire on the right side of the road, but we were on the left side of the road going down. So we weren't getting direct fire at that time. Well, all of a sudden, off the side road, as we're walking, we didn't go that far, 100, 200 yards maybe. This moped comes up with 2 guys on it. We're all on pins and needles. We're like, oh, that's a guy. That's a red moped. So there's 10 of us, just all aimed at him. The guy stops, goes, you can see in his face, he's going, I'm going to go the other direction. That wasn't the guy we were looking for. So we come across, we go up a little bit, we cross in front of the 4-vehicle convoy. Mm. And our platoon sergeant is up behind a berm, and
all right. So picking up where we left off, we're talking about the convoy.
Yeah. So we were walking from the convoy. Our platoon sergeant's behind this berm. He says, "All right, everybody get in line." That's one of the things we do. We have a base of fire, then we maneuver to the thing we're trying to take. So our platoon sergeant gets all of us. We're up on this berm. I'm up there in the berm too. I'm the only medic. Platoon sergeant says, "Get the F down. If you get hit, no one's going to take care of you." So we're sitting there. We're taking like light fire weapons here and there, nothing super heavy, but still, bullets are flying somewhere. And I was like, "Well, I want to shoot." In my head, I'm going, "Well, that's not very much fun." But they make a good point. If I get hit, who's going to take care of me?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how my platoon treated me the rest of the time. They took care of me. I was there to take care of them, and they took care of me because nobody was there to replace me.
Right.
So, as things calm down, we don't stay there for very long, 10, 15 minutes. Decide, all right, we're just going to continue on getting us back to where we're supposed to go, which is FOB Vulcan in Ghazni. We get back in the trucks, we drive down, we see where the Afghan police were walking around the side of the road, we just keep going. We drive to Ghazni, which is the capital city of Ghazni province. In Ghazni, there's a provincial reconstruction team, an air base, for helicopters. There's a forward surgical team there, kind of like MASS, but a lot smaller.
Okay.
More bare bones. We pass by that base, and we go about, maybe half mile on the road to our FOB. Our FOB was a former Soviet Union base back when they invaded. There's this big built-up compound, and then inside this big built-up compound was the Afghan battalion called a Kandak was there. They had this big metal landing strip for helicopters the Soviets built. They still used it. And then inside of this compound was our base called FOB Vulcan. They didn't mess with us very much at FOB Vulcan. But the FOB Ghazni, where the Forward Surgical or FST was, and that bigger base, they got rocketed all the time, constantly. We'd be sitting out at night drinking beers at Vulcan, and we'd hear mortar rounds go off. Oh, Ghazi's getting attacked again. Ghazni, our Vulcan, where we stayed, didn't get attacked very much. It wasn't very big. We had about a company-sized element, 150 maybe. We shared it with the Polish.
Oh, okay.
So we actually, our commander overseas was a Polish commander. Our artillery was Polish 155 artillery. And that's where we worked and lived out of. Got our truck set. We did a change out. We started getting to the meat and potatoes of our mission, within the first week. Our job was to train the Afghan police. We had Waghaz, which was a village south of Ghazni, and then Qarabagh. Qarabagh was a little bit bigger. Waghaz, we'd go and do these missions. We go out there for the day. We go to Waghaz. We knew from the people we replaced, they said, When you go there, within an hour, you're going to get mortar hit. So we got there the first time, and sure enough, within an hour, we got some mortar fire. It was really far off in the mountains. There wasn't much we could do with it. And that wasn't our primary mission to chase those down. Our primary mission was to get first contact with the chief of that town.
Okay.
So that's what we did. We didn't stay there very long. And then we moved on to our next village of Qarabagh, which is where we'd overnight a lot. Just because of the distance, and it made sense.
Right.
So we'd go there, and then the Qarabagh Police District is in like a little compound. They had a police building. There's a building that was in the back that the Americans had paid for. Half of it the Afghans used. Yeah, half of it. Other half was where we stayed and slept when we were there in training missions. So
Okay.
we'd go there and do a couple days, live off MREs, have meals with the Afghans, train them how to do things. I don't feel like we ever got a lot done. We did sit out and listen a lot. At night, we'd still have to security, because we're not in a base. We're out in the middle of town. We had to be on top of a abandoned Afghan prison. And that's where we sat up at night. We had thermals. We had night vision. We'd sit there and listen and watch. If something happened, we'd call the guys. Hey, get in the trucks. We're getting out of here. Because there's only a platoon of us. Four trucks. Maybe 20 people, maybe.
Yeah.
2 interpreters. And we'd do those missions. And about 3 months in, we got to Afghanistan in March 2010.
Right.
We would, do missions, a couple weeks here and there. We'd have Thursdays off usually. Because that Friday was Muslims usually take a day off, or it's their holy day.
Oh, right.
So we'd do that. We'd go and do training missions. Like the second time we went to Waghaz, we got hit by mortar fire again. We said, but we knew we were going to hit, so we brought some extra toys. We brought a tow missile launcher. So we get there, we set the tow, we know we're going to get hit. We had a Ford observer with us. Forward was calling airplanes to hit precision strikes and stuff. So they bring in the tow, we set up, boom, we get more. Oh, we know right where they're at. They're coming from that side of that mountain there. We're like, oh, if the tow can get it. So we fire the tow missile. The tow missile leaves the tube and takes a nosedive into some trees. I don't know what's wrong. I'm not a tow gunner, but it didn't work. And it was a mess to clean up. Well, we're still getting mortared by these guys, and they're not very good. They're not hitting in the compound, but they're hitting around the compound. So, given practice, and they'd probably get us eventually.
Yeah.
So we said, all right, let's go get them. So we pile in the trucks, the 4 trucks, and we drive down this windy road to get to them where we had never been before, where apparently no American forces had been down this road in years. Let me back up. Before we left to go chase them down, we called in the Polish artillery I mentioned.
Okay.
We called in the Polish artillery. First joint NATO fire mission in Afghanistan in 10 years. We screwed that one up badly. So we had this Ford observer whose job is to call in fires. So who calls in the artillery? The lieutenant. I'm not very fond of the lieutenant we had. He had some issues. Our platoon was really good, but our lieutenant was not out there. He called it in, and my understanding is he flip-flopped some of the numbers. And it's a big open expanse, so we're looking at the mountain, we're going, all right, it's going to hit there in 3, 2, boom. It was 1,000 meters off in the wrong direction. Whoa, it's supposed to be over there.